Welcome to the Creative Adventure Podcast, an artist's guide to modern freelancing. Welcome to the Creative Adventure Podcast. My name is John Jagsney, and today we are going to be talking about time management. So before we get into the whole business stuff, pull up a chair, get a big plate of meat or mutton, put down your sword, put down your axe, close your applications, put down After Effects, put down Procreate, close Blender or Cinema 4D, and sit up by the fire in the tavern today. And we're going to talk about how to manage our time as freelancers. It's a very important topic as a freelancer. If we imagine, let's say, the Mandalorian. He's one of my favorite freelancers. Sorry. He probably lives a pretty chill life outside of him doing work, but he has to manage his time to show up to his gigs and do it quickly. And he has to be very efficient with how he does his job. He also has to be on top of scheduling around the hits that he has to make, the bounties that he's meeting, the targets he has to do for his bounty hunting job. He very much has to be like, oh, okay, this person is going to be there at this time. I need to move my schedule around. You kind of just have to manage your time to be a successful bounty hunter, to be a successful freelancer. You need to know when to strike when the iron is hot for yourself, and you also need to know when to show up when other people are involved. So time management is a very important skill that we must have as freelancers. So let's go ahead and just first define a couple things that are worth addressing when it comes to managing our time. As a freelancer, we also are human beings that have to have some sort of purpose, some sort of fulfillment out of life. So we need to define what that is. We need to define what our priorities are, and when are we going to be the most productive. So I want to start off this podcast with three just basic questions. And those questions are: one, what is your purpose? Two, what is your priority? And three, when are you most productive? Now, I will say there is another gentleman who was very inspirational for some of these quotes. Well, two of them. The first is Gary Keller. He wrote the book The One Thing. And then the coach who I met at Camp Mograph, Dave O'Connor, he asked me questions very similarly of like, what is purpose, priorities, etc. And I am adding the productivity question because it's important to understand we as people, when are we most productive? When is our best energy? So before we get into like finding our best energy, if you don't know when you are most productive, I'm going to encourage time tracking. Now, I'm going to be straight up as I've been writing the outline for this podcast and this content. I straight up say I think time tracking is not a useful tool, because at the end of the day, when it comes to being a freelancer, the most important thing is not how long it took you to make the work. It is how the amount of work that you can produce within that time to the quality that is necessary. Most people don't care when Geralt of Rivia does his job at a certain time. They care that, hey, he slayed the beast, or when Jinx from Arcane is building her gadgets. No one really cares about like how many gadgets she made. All she needs to know is, do I have enough to wreak havoc on the upper part of the cities? So all that being said, time tracking is a system that is good for certain types of jobs, retail, service jobs like working at a restaurant, where it's just like, it's going to be busy during that time. You just make yourself available. And I've been on some studio jobs, and I've had some jobs in the past where I've had to do time tracking. But as a freelancer, I find more value for me personally. And if you are interested in doing the freelance thing, you will need to pretty much throw time tracking out the window so then you can focus on, I'm going to make the work that I need that solves the problems for my clients within the time that I am given. And typically the time that you are given is the deadline. So that being said, if you don't know when your prime time is, you should track it. And it's going to be a homework assignment near the end of this podcast episode. But really take some time to sit down and see where you actually spend your time. So the website I do recommend is Toggl, and that's spelled TOGGL.com. So basically just drop the E, and basically you can just use it to be like, hey, when I wake up, I'm on my phone for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to make breakfast, then I'm walking the dog, whatever you're doing, just whatever you do, just track it. So then you can find out, hey, when in my day am I most productive? Just do that for a week. But all that being said, what you should really find is your prime time. What is the most productive time of your day? So before we get into that, I want to take a short break. Go refill your cup of mead. It's 7:30 when I'm recording this. Refill your cup of coffee, whatever it is, and don't drink before 5 p.m. Okay, take a break. Bye. Primetime energy is basically the concept of allocating your highest priority task to the most productive part of your day. So, unfortunately, for some freelance jobs, you cannot determine when the dragon is going to wreak havoc on the village. You kind of just have to jump and go. But if you are doing more knowledge-based work where you're either doing After Effects, social media marketing, painting, etc., you can be a little bit more loose. So there is a balance that we must strike with how we include other people, other teams, while also doing our solo individual work. But prime time is basically just, when are you going to have the most output? When are you going to be able to create the most work? And it really just depends on a couple of things. The first is like, how long can you actually produce good work? And in doing studies for this podcast and writing the outline, I had a hard time finding .edu related studies to reference this. A lot of it was like .com, LinkedIn, just random business stuff. But it's just like everyone was saying like, oh, the human brain can only focus for like 90 minutes from Andrew Huberman, or LinkedIn was like, most humans can only work for 3 to 4 hours before they start losing productivity. And that was pretty general across the board while I was researching this. And even knowing myself and coming across other entrepreneurial content, they're like, yeah, work 4 to 6 hours. And I think that's pretty reasonable. And this type of content was almost fetishizing like how long we could work, versus like, as just human beings, all we care about is output. Like, no one really cares how long things take for the most part. Like if you go to a movie, like you're there for a certain amount of time, but you don't care like how long the movie is, as long as it's entertaining throughout the entire thing. That time isn't wasted. So all that being said, prime time is really just finding the period of the day in which you can have the most output. It may be time related, but it shouldn't be. The amount of work that you make and the quality of work that you make in that time is most effective. And we'll talk about prioritization in just a moment, because there are some tasks that are not as important as other tasks, but really just finding that time in which you can sit down, do some work for a couple hours, and it's like really meaningful work, and then you just do lower priority tasks later in the day. So in general, through all the research that I was doing for this, the general consensus is like, most people, even some of the most effective artists in the world, one of them that was mentioned was like Stephen King, only wrote for like 4 to 6 hours a day. And it's like, okay, great, amazing. But like people didn't care how long he was writing, they just cared about his books. So, how should you set up your day? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Are you someone who just functions really well? Midday depends. I'll share a little bit about my day. I typically wake up at when I'm not doing like super fitness, powerlifting related things. I'll typically wake up at like 6:30 a.m. That's my good time. I'll probably start with some water, coffee, go to the bike on the exercise bike for 30 minutes just to like wake up and just get some tutorial time in, or I'll watch a show on the bike. It's just more entertaining for me to just hang out and start my morning a little bit slower, and watch tutorials or watch TV rather than straight up sit down and go right into work. So I am doing it on the bike so I can be super efficient with like my exercise and stuff. Or sometimes I will go to the gym. So 6:30 a.m. to like 9 a.m. is kind of me time, and that might include journaling. That might include doing fitness stuff. That might include just sitting on the iPad and sculpting in ZBrush or drawing in Procreate for a little bit. It really just depends on what I'm feeling that morning. It's not as rigid as what like morning routine productivity fetish content is. It's pretty loose for me, but I try and keep the first like hour or two open for just me. After that, I'll typically go take a shower, 9 a.m., and then 9:30, 10 a.m., I'm pretty much going. And at that point, this is my prime time. This is my super productivity time. So like 9 a.m. to like 3:30, 4 p.m., I'm going. And during that time, I have actually adopted a couple of extra useful tools to help me stay productive. Those tools include I do use earplugs, not sponsored by them, but they are loop earplugs. I'm holding them on my desk right now. They are very non-intrusive and very helpful. And then with that, I'll have my headphones on and I'll have a very gentle, like ambient soundtrack in the background, either the World of Warcraft cinematic music playing, Halo, Animal Crossing, etc. And that's just at like a super low volume, just so that like the earplugs stop most of the sound, but with my headphones on, it creates this like immersive, like I'm just in it and I'm not leaving. I am locked in, so to speak. And I'm doing that locked in time for a solid, let's say 9 to 2:30 to 4 p.m. Really just depends on the day. There are days in which I don't feel super productive and I may just need social interaction, so I will hop on a Discord channel with some of my other friends who are in the art creative space, the Patrick 4D server, the mograph.com server, the Clint server. I will sometimes hop in Discord on days when maybe I'm just need a little bit of social interaction, but I am still trying to focus on some work. After that, after like my super prime time, whether it's like 3.5 hours to the 5 hour mark, I will start working on less important things. That includes working on my YouTube channel, even though that is very important to me. It's working on my YouTube channel. It's working on my lower priority tasks. Maybe I have to go to the DMV. Maybe I have to go to the grocery store, etc. I'll typically end the day with going to the gym if I didn't go to the gym in the morning, and then at like 7 to 10 p.m. watching a show, maybe playing a video game with some friends, going out to dinner with some friends, and then ending the day. So that's basically how I set up my day, and it's coming from a place of being a morning person. I am very much I am energized in the morning. I'm ready to go. When I have coffee in the morning, I'm just like, let's go. Let's really take the day. And I know some artists really benefit from having a later wake up time in the morning. They also will spend most of the day just hanging out, chilling with friends, going to lunches, dinners, etc., and then they'll start actual work at like 8:30, 9 p.m. and then go until 2 in the morning. And sometimes that works for people, and I don't knock that. It's just a matter of finding that prime time that works for you. But ultimately, this prime time does require a certain amount of rest. So rest is one of those things that I would demonize a whole lot, because it's just like we can just keep going. It's very toxic hustle culture mindset. But as I have embraced more fitness related goals, powerlifting, bodybuilding. I'm sorry, I keep going to the fitness analogies. You can't have awesome consecutive training days. You need to have a rest day in there. And the reason why those rest days are super important is because it allows you to recover, so that when you do show back up in your exercise of choice, you can really perform to the degree that you want to. So rest is one of those very important things that if you don't set aside time for, then the following day you're going to lose out. And the reason why I share this is it is related to primetime energy. Because as you try and extract primetime energy, that level of high productivity into the times beyond the 6 hour mark, if you're really trying to milk one day and get like 13 hours of straight consecutive work, the best way to think about that is you are effectively borrowing from tomorrow's energy. And that's a concept that was coming from that book, The One Thing, that Gary Keller wrote, where when you try and extend those hours beyond what you have mental energy for during that day, it's just like, all right, you're taking mental energy from tomorrow. And I can say from my own personal experience, when I try and have those 13-hour days, the following day, let's be real, I'm waking up late, I'm sluggish in the gym if I'm trying to start with the gym, then I don't eat as well. And on the day in which you are having that like 13-hour day, let's be real, how productive are those work hours beyond like hour 7? Like hour 7, 8, 9, 10, is that really going to be your best work? So it's really about understanding not just what is your prime time today, but how is it going to affect tomorrow as well. So let's say you don't know when your prime time is. It's worth going to track that, figuring out when it is, and then really building your own schedule. And most days can be like that, but other days can be a little looser. Not every day needs to be super entrepreneurial, productivity, hustle culture porn, perfect. You don't need to have every day being amazing, but overall, try and build your day around your prime time and build a system so then you can really find what is the most effective for you. So it's worth asking, like, when do you have the most energy? Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? There's no best time in the day for everyone, and sometimes that window shifts a little bit depending on the time of the day, depending on the time of year. Holidays change things, etc. So it's just a matter of understanding that like most people can really only be productive for like 3 to 6 hours, and then when is that for you, and when can you milk that? So we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about leaking time, giving ourselves slack and freedom in our time, and using that as a way to find better rest and really get the most out of our prime time. So let's take a short break, and we'll come back shortly. Time leaking time, and slack. These are things that could almost be thought of like sweaty gamer mindsets, where you're trying to min-max how you spend your time so you can get the most out of it during that time. And as someone who did play World of Warcraft, and I would really have to manage my cooldowns, get the most out of my 30% increased damage buff or my potions, I really got into the min-maxing of getting the most out of like short time windows. So leaking time, finding slack, min-maxing your time can be a little sweaty, almost a little hustle culture-y, but I think it's worth addressing because there are things that we do as humans that are mildly distracting or majorly distracting. There are things that make it harder for us to do our best work. So for me personally, as someone who works from home most of the time, one of the things I have leaned into and have eased the gas, no pun intended, is driving. I actually really dislike driving because I've sold myself the idea that whenever I'm driving, my hands are doing something that is less important than me, like working on animation, working in editing, modeling, whatever I'm doing. And as such, I do believe that driving can be a waste of time. It can be more productive because you're maybe going to see friends, driving to your job. You're doing these things that are probably important to get there. And you can make driving more palatable, listening to podcasts, listening to books, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is, you can still use that time to be fulfilling in some way. If you're listening to this podcast while you're driving, for example, there's an example of like min-maxing your leaked time as best as possible. But it is unfortunate that sometimes driving can be a situation where you do end up accidentally leaking time because you can't control traffic, you can't control how many people are there, accidents, etc. So one of the things that I've adopted is I really try and minimize driving during rush hour because that is leak time. Spending 45 extra minutes on the road while I do live in Los Angeles, California, and where traffic is significantly worse than other parts of Southern California, I try and avoid traffic like the plague. So that is just an example of leaked time. Another example is busy times at the grocery store. The busiest time is typically between 4 to 7 p.m. on most weekdays, and Sundays is actually really bad as far as being very busy for the grocery store. So I typically try and avoid going to things that are going to be the most busy. Or like another example is going to Starbucks in the morning between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. It is just a super long line, which is why certain services such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc. have really grown in popularity. It's because I was like, oh, I don't need to wait in line. I could just spend money. And I'm of the mindset of just show up earlier or get your coffee a little bit later, sort of thing. So it is possible to leak time in some areas that are maybe not the best use of time, but I think it's worth addressing that we can be in control of those things as freelancers if we do make our own schedule. Unfortunately, if you do have a standard 9 to 5 job, you are very much at the mercy of what your 9 to 5 job is scheduled as, and unfortunately, that does spit you out into places where it will be busy. 9 to 5 jobs have really crafted the times in which rush hour happens at Starbucks and on the road. So it's important to understand that there are places in which we do accidentally leak time or just can't control that. So just be aware of it when you may find moments where it's like, you know what, I didn't need to stand in that line, or I didn't need to be in traffic if I maybe just woke up 30 minutes earlier. And I do believe that this is a little bit more useful to think about rather than thinking about like the hustle culture mindset, because that mindset is very much like keep grinding, keep working no matter what. And I'm like, we could just use our time more effectively and efficiently. So it's just a matter of like, hey, I don't need to do this standing in line thing or traffic, so I can maybe get 30 minutes extra of sleep, because sleep, it does wonders for our productivity. Now, on top of that, we also have Slack. And one of the biggest issues around min-maxing your time is it's very easy to bookend your tasks, your priorities, your events, your social engagements right up to one another. You're constantly going from one thing to the next. And Slack is basically giving yourself a buffer between that. I can't tell you how much of a buffer you should make, but let's just be real. You should probably have a buffer for when you go to play Dungeons and Dragons. You want to know why? Because everyone's like, oh, it's a 3-hour session. Now it's a 6-hour session. It extends beyond that. You can't control how long things are going to be most of the time if there's no like deliberate set end time like a movie or like a job. So having Slack is there to give you the freedom and the possibility that you can enjoy things completely and fully before they end, so you don't have to leave abruptly. You don't need to just wreck yourself on being stressed about being overly booked, overly scheduled. And this also applies to client work. When you think that something is going to take a certain amount of time, multiply that time by 1.5 at least, maybe double, and then book the job. Because you never know if stuff pops up. Is After Effects going to crash? Is Procreate going to is the inking stage or the drawing stage going to be just significantly longer because some extra notes came in? You never know. So Slack is one of those things where whenever you have some sort of tasks, give it a little bit extra wiggle room. So for example, whenever I book meetings, I book it for an hour, but I target 30 minutes. I say like, hey, let's book a 30-minute meeting, but on my calendar it lives for an hour. So I have that extra 30-minute window just in case. And this doesn't apply for just the ending of an event, but also the beginning. I typically show up 10 to 15 minutes early to everything, and that's just me. I genuinely do enjoy being punctual. I think it's respectful. But the reason why I do that is because I don't know what traffic's going to be like. I don't know what parking is going to be like. I don't know if there's going to be a line at this event I'm going to. So I show up at least 10 to 15 minutes early because I want to not feel stressed that I didn't show up to the thing on time. So all that being said, you can leak time by accidentally showing up to things a little too late, a little too at the peak rush hour. You can also stress yourself out because you don't give yourself slack around the things that you schedule for yourself. So really, all this prime time, leak time, slack time, etc. comes down to prioritization. You'll notice I didn't really talk about reducing other leak time on using phones, playing video games, things that we typically identify as big time wasters. And while those habits can very much be significant and bad time wasters, I also do think that there's a way in which we can meaningfully include some of those things that are kind of fun. Like, let's be real, watching dog videos on TikTok is adorable and fun. I almost equate it like watching The Office back in like the mid 2000s, or like watching The Simpsons. When I was a kid, I watched so many episodes of The Simpsons. Am I dating myself by saying that? Or like Family Guy or South Park, because we didn't have TikTok in the mid 2000s. So I didn't really want to include that as like the forefront, is because maybe that is a prioritization for you. You do enjoy doing some fun things like playing World of Warcraft or Magic the Gathering in your free time. So rather than just blindly taking away things that bring us joy, I'd rather us think about how we can not waste time on things that are really not important to us. Because, like, let's be real, one of the reasons why I don't like driving, or I make sure that I give myself slack for things, is so then I can maybe log into World of Warcraft for a little bit and just do a daily, or go play Genshin, or hey, you want to go play Magic sort of thing. Those things bring me joy, and there's lots of parts of life that just don't bring us joy, like going to the DMV, or doing checkup doctor appointments. Even though those are important, you should make time for that. Setting aside time to do the things that bring us joy are important, and this time management skill is not just about managing our time to do the most amount of work, but it's also being able to fully enjoy life in the most meaningful way possible. So that does again come down to prioritization, and with that, I'm going to share with you how I prioritize my life as a freelancer next. So we're going to take a short break, and then we'll talk about how to prioritize more effectively next. So when it comes to prioritization, out of all the productivity books I have read, all the random YouTube videos I have consumed, the most valuable tool for me has been the Eisenhower matrix from President Eisenhower. Is basically a prioritization chart that was basically organizing tasks into urgent and important. So this basic graph is a four quadrant graph, and at the very top of this graph you have your urgent, and on the very left side of the graph you have important. So you can split this into four quadrants, and on the top left you will have your important and urgent tasks. Those are the things that you must do first, the things that probably make you money, the things that are dependent on people's time, people's schedules, etc. Then immediately to the right of that is you have your important tasks, but not urgent. And these are actually the most important tasks. These are the things that will grow your business. It's probably like building up sales. It is probably working on that portfolio. It's probably leveling up your website, but doing it very simply. Let me just add, like, chill out on your website. It doesn't need to be perfect, but like if you don't have a website, making one so people can see your work and see your portfolio. So on the very top of the Eisenhower matrix, you have the tasks that you should probably be doing is your important and urgent tasks, the things that pay you money now, the things that pay you that are dependent on other people, and then your important but not urgent tasks. Those are the things that are going to help grow your business, grow yourself as a freelancer, etc. Now, at the very bottom of the Eisenhower matrix, you have your not important tasks and then urgent tasks. And those are things like going to the DMV. I mean, it's important, but it's also not as important to your business. It's just like you have to do it. It's typically labeled as something that you should delegate. And if you can delegate those things, you should. Like, it's not important for you to do, so you shouldn't do that. Like, if you are a designer, a graphic designer, and you need photos, but you're not good at taking photos, you should delegate that. And so it's not important for you to do the photos, but it is urgent that you get them. So the bottom left is your urgent but not important tasks, and not important doesn't mean it's not important. It may not be important for you to do. And lastly, in the lower right hand corner, it's not important and not urgent. And in most Eisenhower matrices, it's saying delete it, don't do it. Now, I personally do have a handful of things that I put in the not urgent and not important, but I save it for last. And those tasks are typically playing World of Warcraft, diving into Baldur's Gate 3, maybe trying to buy some new cards for my Magic deck. Because, hey, they're not important, they're not urgent, but they bring me joy and they bring me happiness. So overall, you should live in the top portion of the Eisenhower matrix most of the time, which is the important and urgent tasks, and then the important and non-urgent tasks. Now, the last thing I want to share with you today, and this is the best tip I got from the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, and that is event time and time blocking. So event time is basically saying, hey, on this day, we have this task or this event that we are going to do, and the day is not done until this task is complete. And generally speaking, what you should do most of the time, if you're trying to adopt event time, is if you have a very important large project, find a stopping point, estimate a stopping point that would take you 3 to 4 hours, maybe 5, but 3 to 4 hours. Choose one of those tasks and then set your day to do that first. And that is the event that you do for the day. And when that task is complete, your day is done. You can do all of your important but non-urgent tasks. You can do all of your maybe even urgent but not important tasks. Or you can go play video games depending on if it's that kind of day for you. But basically, find a task in your schedule that is going to take 3 to 4 hours and just do that first in the event and block out that time. Eliminate distractions during that time. Set up your coffee, put on your earplugs if you do that, listen to music, turn off distractions, and get through that thing first. So for example, I'm recording this podcast first thing in the morning because it's important to me. It's my most important thing to do on a Saturday morning. And then I'm going to go to the grocery store, and then I'm going to go get lunch with my friend, and then we're going to go probably play some video games. So I set up my day pretty much very similarly to that. I'm like, okay, this task is going to take me 3 to 4 hours. I get that done, and I can move on to things that maybe bring me joy, maybe help maintain my overall life as just a human adult, and then I just move on to the other things that bring me joy after. So prioritization does really come down to understanding for you what is important and what is urgent, and then dividing that into tasks or time for your tasks so then you can actually get the stuff done. So all that being said, I wanted to share with you that there is no perfect schedule. We have the 9 to 5 system because it's just an old-fashioned system based on old farming habits, old labor laws in the early 1900s. But as knowledge workers living in the online ecosystem, you can do stuff whenever you want as long as it is actually important for you to do. And it's easy to choose non-important tasks. So that just comes with practice. So I hope this podcast today was helpful for you to understand how you can manage your time better. These are the tools that I have adopted as a freelancer where I no longer track my time. I'm just really skilled personally. I hope it doesn't come off as arrogant. I have built the skill for myself of prioritization better. And if you're just starting out in your freelance career, you'll learn that there are some things that are going to be important and some things that are going to be non-important. So I want you to end this podcast with a couple of questions. 1, what is your purpose? 2, what are your priorities? 3, when are you most productive? Number 4, where are you most productive? Is it at home? Is it your office? Is it etc.? Whatever that is. And then I also want you to consider 6 points that I got from the book, The One Thing. And this will maybe help you just think about how you prioritize better. Everything does not matter equally. Multitasking is actually a bullshit skill. I do not recommend doing it. Do not rely on discipline. Discipline is actually where most time management fails. Instead, it's about building habits. There's no such thing as willpower, only the habits you make as you manage your time. When it comes to having a balanced life, you choose to have a balanced life. It merely does not happen by chance. And when it comes to managing your time, you choose how to spend your time. And the last thing I will say is from the book, when your goals are small, your achievements will be small. If you aim for the stars but hit the moon, you're still on the frickin' moon. How cool is that? So I got a lot of value from the book, The One Thing, and I did lean into most of the concepts from that book into this podcast today, but a lot of these have also come with my life as a freelancer doing freelance video production for board games and stuff. And for me personally, that there's going to be days where I just want to sit down and play Magic with my friends or go play World of Warcraft. And there's going to be other days where I am super hyped on making art, making my YouTube videos, making my content, and it really just is finding a balance and building habits around the good time management skills and then knowing when to rest when I need to. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Creative Adventure Podcast. I hope you rest up. I hope that you go get some amazing quests, go slay some dragons, and we'll end today's episode with a dice roll once again. Today we have the dice that we rolled last week. It is a metal dragon little print on each of the faces dice, and let's see how our next freelance project is going to go. That is a 14. That's pretty good. That's above average. I'll take it. And now from here I will leave you with the rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening to the Creative Adventure Podcast, And until next time, may the dice forever roll in your favor for the freelance things. Take care. Bye.